Greetings all, Gerald Clark here on July 13th, 2015. I'm going to be continuing my podcast on my second book, The Seventh Planet Mercury Rising. And today we're going to be covering Emerald Tablet number 15, that's the last tablet in Chapter 5. I wanted to also mention my first book, The Anunnaki of Nibiru, which was released in August 2013, and it's been hanging on in category as a bestseller on and off since that time, as you can see here in this slide. So today, once again, we're going to do Chapter 5, Emerald Tablet 15. As I mentioned, this is the last one in the series, and it's probably one of the more important ones. So let's go ahead and get started. I've listed some of the bullet points that I'm going to be covering today, much as I did last time. And in the beginning of the tablet, Thoth tells us that the path to eternal life is discussed first by receiving power to reveal the God-Man. Now this is a very interesting allusion to this energy, this Ba energy that is discussed in the previous tablets. Now this Ba energy is, according to Thoth, our birthright as immortal beings. Darkness and light are asserted to be from the same nature, only perceived differently given the fact that the Creator of all permits both for duality contrast. Light is characterized as having order, and darkness is presented as disorder. And if you assess your life and see if that isn't true, maybe Feng Shui makes more sense to you now. We're told that our purpose for being is to transmute the darkness in our incarnation into light. Now, what a simple statement. If you stop and think about that, if somebody told you that your job was to turn lemons into lemonade at every instance when you face problems in your life, it might make it more of a game. So not all of them are easy, and some of them get much harder as your path gets more complicated. But keep that in mind. Our purpose for being is to transmute the darkness in our incarnation into light. So as spiritual beings having a human experience, that's our job. Speaking of light and dark, I drew up this little, flow diagram, if you will, some time ago when I was putting together the holographic model that Thoth gave us in the Emerald Tablets. And I was just segregating what was true and false for me on left and right, just a very simple demarcation between truth and lies. And oftentimes, the simplest answer is the right answer. So as you can see on the left-hand side, I've characterized some of the beings that I have read, been exposed to, and corroborated their story to see if there isn't truth and light. And coincidentally, the three progenitors of mankind, Enki, his son Ningshita, and Ninmah Isis, show up on the left with all of their contributions to our state of what we perceive as light. And the Dark Lords that are mentioned, including the Dark Lord Honolulu, all of the affiliations with Enlil and his religions, and all the fallout from propaganda in the news and to written accounts I've put over on the right. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you can look at it and see where I'm at. And basically it comes down to the Enkyites on the left and the Enlilites on the right. It's a very simplistic model, but if you analyze it, you'll find out it's true. Thoth tells us mankind is composed of three natures. A threefold composition, which is a subset of 9 total elements. And the original author of the statement, as above, so below, was Thoth, as he states here. The first attribute is physical. Our second characteristic is astral. And our third is mental. So in the physical composition, he describes blood movements that facilitate the heart beating. And one of my engineering peers pointed out how significant the frequency of the heartbeat is relative to brain waves and such, and I hadn't really given it that much thought, but it is quite significant. And the heartbeat is even mentioned in the Atrahasis as being heard as a drum beat forever by Enki when he created the first avatar. Magnetism, traveling through our nerve ganglion pathways, is claimed to provide energy for cells and tissue. Now think about that as the magnetic flux of the Earth is changing in your nerve ganglia. That includes your brain. So if the magnetic field were to suddenly be altered in some way, imagine what it would do to your memory. The next item is the Akasa flow, and I find this one very interesting. It's a subtle energy that flows through the channels of the body for a complete system. And he's saying blood movement, magnetism, and Akasa work in unison, allowing for life in the body. The skeletal system is formed from the system where the Akasa subtle energy flows, like an antenna, as I have posited. Mastering the elements allows the secret of life in the body, the Ba, to be activated. Based on these three energy body distinctions provided by Dremvelo and Melchizedek, and this is tablet 14 that he mentions this, chakra, prana, and auric, these fall under the physical. The next composition is the astral, and this energy component has three aspects as well. The mediator between the above and the below, non-spiritual. Now this one I often use the term spirit and energy interchangeably. The energy field that has the potential to use the earth portal is the Ba, and the Merkaba meditation, or the Merkaba star tetrahedron field, has the key elements cited for this access, the Ba and the Ka, which you see showing up in the description of the meditation. And then the final component of the astral is non-physical, and this is the ability to move above and below, which is what we here on Earth term an out-of-body experience, or an oob. The third characteristic of man is the mental. The mind also has three natures of its own. A, the carrier of the will of the Great One. He's talking about the creator of all. So mentally, we have the will embedded in us of the creator of all to choose the perceived good. That's how I interpret that. B is the arbiter of cause. In other words, you cause everything in your own holographic reality. And C, once you cause it, you get to be the arbiter of the effect. So you get to be the mediator between the effect of the cause that you created. So our spiritual self, he then asserts, is composed of four qualities, penetrating all 9 parallel dimensions that are accessible to us from the Earth. Now, recall in the holographic model we had other dimensions, but he's saying that the spiritual self that we have an incarnation of has access to all 9 parallel dimensions. So let's look at that model just real quickly again, and I'll kind of walk the mouse around to get you started from how I see it. So starting at the top here is the 9th dimension, shown right here, in the circle of light for the creator of all. This is where energy and unmanifest light, dark matter, and the particle zoo, if you will, from physics, has its existence, which, operating through the law of creation, creates all matter. Similarly, we mentioned in an earlier tablet, the law of time was created by the creator of all to distinguish events. And from what I understand, I believe this is a cymatic vibration that's eternal. So on this side of the diagram is the pre-Big Bang event, as science calls it. This is the Great Void, which when you read in Genesis, it talks about distinguishing the firmaments above and below. Well, this is the Great Void over here. Okay, but on this side of the line, and past this point, we're saying that the creator of all has instantiated matter and created the laws of time. Now, inside these two dimensions, the 7th and 8th, Thoth describes them as being, once he visits Arulu, he describes those as being composed of chaos, and that was the reason that the beings on Arulu had charge of that area, because it had to be managed, otherwise it would destroy all creation. This level, or the 6th level, is where Arulu is located, and here I'm showing that when you have the Ba energy plus the key that he gives you, you're allowed to visit Arulu in your out-of-body experience for up to 6 hours. And over here, no Ba, no key, no dice. Okay, this is a reincarnation path here. If you die and haven't received the key, so you'll probably be reused over and over until you figure it out. Now, the fourth and the fifth dimensions are part of the DUAT. The fourth dimension is accessible from the Earth side of the portal, and the fifth dimension on this side has 15 different access points coming out of this side to the sixth dimension to Arulu. And of course, here's our Earth with our three-dimensional bounds. L1, 2, and 3 could stand for the Van Allen belts, which we have discovered. And similarly, they could stand for locales 1, 2, and 3, as described by Robert Monroe in his classic book, Journeys Out of the Body. And that's really, really an important book. If you want to learn how to do an out-of-body experience, study chapter 16 and chapter 17 of that book. It starts on page 203. Absolutely essential and to learn how to do this. Now, there are probably follow-on books, but this one really changed my life. That was the book that my humanities instructor gave me in high school when I wrote it in my journal, what was happening to me. And I'd written about it many, many times, but it's really fascinating. In very short order, if you study that book and do what it tells you, you too can get conscious control of your out-of-body experience. Now, I added some supplemental information on this side to talk about these 9 parallel dimensions that he says are accessible to your spiritual being. And I started layering them from the outside in, representing worlds within worlds as he talks about them, or various circumferences from the surface of the Earth going down to the lowest circumference. So here's the radius of the Earth at the outer one, and you can see if you were to take the circumference of the Earth and you got the radius as well, you can actually calculate the actual frequency that would occur at each one of these 9 layers, and that's what I put in this table. So here's frequency 1 to correspond with this one. Now, these are done in such a way to coincide with the frequencies that we know exist, okay? Now, the first one is very close to what we call the Schumann resonance, which is around 7.8 hertz, even though recently it's been reported that this frequency has gone up higher than that. So that means here's the circumference of the Earth here, 6371 kilometers, which is shown here. So you take the circumference of the radius, and you divide it by divide it into the speed of light, and you'll actually get this frequency. Okay, so so this actually turns out to be the circumference, and that's the radius. Okay, so these are an exploration into what these frequencies may be, and I tried to choose the ones that would fall into your brainwave state in what's called the ELF, the extreme low frequency. Notice I also put this table down here, which is how we've segmented brainwave regions from delta, theta, alpha, and beta. From about 0.5 hertz up to, and I've recently updated this, I used to have 20 hertz, but some data that I've read indicates it could be as high as 60 hertz. Okay, it's probably enough on that chart for now. I want to talk about the mystical number 13 that shows up in this tablet. The number 13 is denoted as mystical. It's the number of the Great One, meaning the creator of all. So based on the nature of the dimensions appearing as one, separated by the law of time. This number is composed as a summation of the 9 parallel dimensions, 3 natures of man, plus the infinite nature of the source, meaning the creator of all, for a total of 13. Is this why the 13th zodiacal sign has been occluded, that of Orpheus? And there's lots of issues with the number 13 being unlucky, 13th floor not being listed in buildings on the elevator and things like that. So it's really an interesting smear on the number 13 where you realize it's associated with the creator of all. Well, when you see that, you have to ask, well, who's trying to be God, if you will, and hide this truth about this? Well, my premise has been it's been pretty clear since the days of Atrahasis. It's been Enlil and his clan. Also significant is the Mayan Tzolk'in calendar division of the creation account into 7 days and 6 nights, which totals 13 columns in their representation. Okay, there's Orpheus Ophiuchus on the left, the snake bearer healer that was killed by Zeus Enlil for trying to heal someone else. Well, now you realize he was probably an Enkiite. That's why he was killed. And on the right, you see Thoth the Magi with his caduceus and the Aurora Borealis, snakes connecting together. So there's a very common origin there. And Thoth was taught many of his precepts to people as an alchemist and a healer. I want to real quickly bring up this picture from my book with the 13 columns and 9 rows. So here you can see the day, night, second day, second night, third day, on and on till you end up the 7 days and 6 nights, totaling 13. And then as you go, starting at 16.4 billion years ago, cellular matter was all that there was. And once you divide this by each one of these day and night cycles, you divide by 20, you'll end up with 1.26 billion years at the end here. So each of these, excuse me, each of these rows is divided by 20 in a telescoping matter. In this next row, starting 820 million years ago, we see mammalian life show up. And the end count ends up being 63.2 million when you divide by 20 on each one of these. Notice 20 times 13 is 260. That was a very significant count in the Mayan calendar. And as you go up, you can see we end up with familial first monkeys, tribal humanoids, regional language began to be spoken, national writing, planetary industrialization. And this is the galactic consciousness level that started January 5th, 1999. And at this point, the division ended up, when you divided by 20 at each column, you ended up with 360 days. And then the final one, which, and I have to give credit to Ian Lungold for this calendar, ends on October 28th, 2011. It's what he called universal conscious co-creation with the creator of all. So basically every 20 days from that point until the restart of the new calendar for some period, you essentially become the arbiter of your cause and effect. So you're co-creating your own reality, and your thoughts are manifesting according to this teaching every 20 days. So 20 days of day, you might have a happy times, and 20 days of night. Okay. So the next topic I want to talk about is this false Merkaba field. The account continues by stating they were held in bondage by a frequency vibration alluded to by Drunvalo as a false Merkaba field. That's reference 32, page 103 of my book. Obviously, which was set up by the Dark Lords to enslave and control people. This false field binds the consciousness of mankind to the third dimension. The way out, meaning the DUAT, is embedded in us all, which is not stated but implied. And it's accessible through this light-born birthright, the Ba energy that we receive from our genetic archetype, Lord Enki, Poseidon himself. I wanted to show you this Pororino 2011 crop circle that showed up. It was quite interesting because for me, seeing that the the ASCII encoding of these dots along the sides here ended up being E-A-E-N-K-I, or Enki. So I thought that was quite interesting. And a 7-pointed star with a 7-pointed star and another 7-pointed star inside. So there you end up with what I decoded as 777 as his number, which I believe is correct, especially since this was the 7th planet, and everything that went down on this planet was really spawned by him and Isis, and who was Ninmah in the Atrahasis account, along with his son named Sheeta, Thoth, who is the person that shows up on the front of my 7th Planet Mercury Rising book. Okay, there's a good reason why it was titled that, because his son was given the keys that you're going to see here pretty soon about accessing the DUAT. And getting out of this holographic enslavement. So we went through the Emerald Tablets to set all that up for you, and then through chapters 6 through 12 in my book, The Seventh Planet Mercury Rising, we're going to talk about that in significant more detail. But while we're talking about this Ba field, I want you to start thinking about the energy field that surrounds a human, that comes from your chakras, your ganglion of Impar, all the way up to the sphenopalatine ganglia, and then with the central conductor of your spine, with your ribs that are conducting this Akasa energy he's talking about, and of course being affected by magnetism from the earth as well. So as above, so below. So the energy fields around the earth are very similar to the fields around your body. And in the Merkaba teaching, it's depicted as a star tetrahedron field, which also shows up in a rotating planet called it's able to be visualized as this field as a star tetrahedron at about the 19.5 degree angle from the middle of the planet. So in torsion field effect physics, as a body is rotating, it creates these energy fields that we're talking about. Well, in the Merkaba meditation, it's visualized as the male and female star tetrahedrons conjoined and spinning in opposite rotations and opposite directions. Okay, the next slide we're going to talk about the travel to the 3D Earth boundaries. We're told that during an out-of-body experience, we're to rise to the outermost limits of the Earth's plane, or third dimensional sphere, discussed more fully in Chapter 12, Reality's Bounds, Spherical Energy Layers. This is the location of the DUAT as discussed previously, the 3D Earth portal to higher dimensions. This dimensional boundary limit is discussed by the OOB pioneer Robert Monroe, labeling the accessible boundaries locales 1 through 3. Here's another picture of the holographic universe that I did. It just gives you a different view of the same information that we had before. Here you can see the void of space, the cymatic vibration creating matter, human energy, plus the Ba key allows you to access this portal of the DUAT that's guarded by Osiris. Located in there are these 12 houses of illusion, and then from here you see the 15 access ways out of the DUAT to Arulu. Here you can see Enki's side of the team and the Dark Lord side of the team occupying Arulu. Okay, and here are the 9 parallel dimensions that we spoke of earlier. So when you reach the DUAT, Thoth tells us that So when reaching the DUAT, Thoth tells us to speak ye the word Dor-e Lila, and after a short time your light will be lifted, allowing passage through the space barrier. A time limit of 6 hours is provided to go to Arulu to visit those who occupy what he terms the sacred land. And when there, he says, expect to see and know the destination of your sun soul at the end of the third dimensional cessation, in other words, the end of your life, and that there's a need for the earth suit, your avatar body, in order to travel there as well. Here is a out-of-body experience process that Thoth gives you. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in detail, probably in a separate video dedicated solely to this topic. He tells you to lie down and relax your mind and your body. Make your intention of leaving the body, focusing on the DUAT portal as one's destination. Then repeat the thought to be free of the body. Then think of the word La Il Gan, letting it resonate as a sound in your mind, drifting with the energy vibration. And while we're talking about out-of-body experience, I mentioned Robert Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body. So this is his book on the left. Really excellent book. Chapters 16 and 17 talk about the pre-process for getting relaxed and then the actual procedure for having an out-of-body experience. Even though he thinks people have them practically every night in their sleep. It's really a matter of having conscious control. And somebody asked me the difference between a near-death experience and an out-of-body experience. And I thought about it for a moment, and I realized that is the definition, and that you're consciously controlling it in an out-of-body experience, whereas if you, in your sleep or having a near-death experience, it wasn't something you tried to do, and so you're generally not as much under conscious control. Also, Robert Monroe wrote some other books, one called Far Journeys, and the final one I think is called Ultimate Journeys. So the process to continue, he says, now leave the body and visualize the DUAT as the destination where the portal is to be accessed. And once you're there, we're instructed to stand before the gates of the DUAT and command the guardians by these words. I am the light, in me is no darkness. Free am I of the bondage of night. Open thou the way of the 12 and the 1, so I may pass to the realm of wisdom. I thought this was an interesting picture of a couple of different depictions of people leaving the body. The one on the left I call the sit-up method, where you visualize a spot on the ceiling, pretty much 90 degrees up and then right in front, and basically lift up as you reach toward it once you get this vibration flowing through your body. Here's another one just showing somebody just floating out of their body, but this one, I've actually done this one many times. Another method is to roll out sideways. Depending on how far along you are, though, you may find that you have the sensation of getting dizzy and you're going to fall off the bed. So I generally like this one better than the rollout method for that reason. At the DUAT, he tells us to expect the gate guard to refuse you and then say, I am the light, for me are no barriers. Open I command by the secret of secrets, Idam El Ahim Sabert Zer Adam. I'm not quite sure what all those mean. I'll have to go look those up, but that's what he tells you to say. Then, if thy words have been truth of the highest, the barriers will open for you. So, once you get to Arulu, enjoy your 6-hour visit so that you will know your destination as a light being, a birthright inherited from the Creator of all. It's not stated in the Emerald Tablets, but simply thinking of returning to the body will automatically initiate the end of one's astral voyage. That's been my experience many times, and it's usually spawned by the fear of being out of the body, which is really one of the hardest things to overcome, is the fear associated with this practice. And Robert Monroe does a good job talking about that in Chapter 16 in his book, Journeys Out of the Body. Final words, the tablet closes with Thoth's encouragement to win ye the way to me, my children. This is an open invitation only to those that seek his wisdom. And Thoth states, I am the key and the way. Does this last statement sound familiar to you, Bible scholars? It should, now that you know his AKA list, which is quite long. The long AKA list for Thoth also included the person known as Jesus to Christians. The keys to the kingdom of heaven, Arulu, rest in Thoth's control, which is provided to you here. Now you know the way out of the holographic simulator where you've been enslaved. Start practicing the out-of-body experience technique provided by Thoth and Robert Monroe, summarized herein. My contact information is shown on this last slide, which I'll leave up for you for a second so that you can see those. If you just go to my Facebook page, there are links to my primary YouTube, my secondary YouTube channel, my Facebook page, and my storefront where you can get the audiobooks, the latest Nibiru research report that I just published on Amazon and made available there, as well as some of the other products that we're going to be offering. I've actually finally put up a genealogy table up there. It's digital now, but we've now got them in vinyl scrolls that will be put up on the storefront shortly. Additionally, Krista's site is artisticvegan.com, and she's got several of the other products that we offer through Amazon, including the alchemical elixirs from Starfire Gold to colloidal silver, and one of her latest products is Moringa that she's bringing to the market as well.